Namaskar. So, in one of my videos, I recently got a comment which said that I focus too much on definitions of things like Brahman, Maya, Advaita, Vedanta. And Vedanta is not about all these definitions, but rather about the realization of Brahman. And I think that's a fair criticism. Coming from an IM and analytics background, dialectics of philosophy is something that comes naturally to me, but I do understand that the ancient rishis did not uh, want us to argue about the definitions of these things. Rather, the intent was for us to realize what Brahman is, realize this one single consciousness, which is the bedrock of all the entire universe. And so, in today's video, I'll be covering something that takes us back to that ideal of realizing what Brahman is. In today's video, I will cover the Panchakosha Vivek, and like in my previous video, I will be going back to the original source, the original Upanishad, to cover this topic. Welcome to another episode of Understanding Vedanta, and today we are going to be talking about the Taittiriya Upanishad. The Taittiriya Upanishad is part of Krishna Yajurved, and it has 3 parts, and it is like a excellent guide of how a teacher should take a student right from the basics to the realization of Brahman. The first part of Taittiriya Upanishad is Shikshavalli, which talks about the definitions of words and the terms that need to be understood. Then the second part is Brahmanandavalli, which gives a very beautiful definition of Brahman, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. And the third part is Bhriguvalli, which through an anecdote explains how step by step we can realize Brahman on our own through a series of meditations. And so that is the topic that I'm going to cover today. The Bhriguvalli starts with a very simple, very simple kind of setting. And most of the Upanishads have these very simple settings of teacher and student. So the Bhriguvalli starts with Rishi Bhrigu asking a question to his father, Rishi Varun. Dear sir, please teach me the knowledge of Brahman. And in response, Rishi Varun doesn't give a simple answer like one would expect, okay, so Brahman is this and this. Instead, he knows that it is not so much to be explained technically. Like the Mandukya Upanishad says, Brahman is achintam, avyavharyam, alakshanam, agrahayam. It is not something that can be thought of really. It goes beyond thoughts, perceptions, words. So this is not something that can be explained to you. So understanding this, Rishi Varun gives Bhrigu some hints, and then he asks him to think about those hints, to meditate on those hints, and come to the realization of Brahman on his own. So he tells Bhrigu, Annam pranam chakshushrotram manovachamiti tam hovacha yato va imani bhutani jayante yen jatani jivanti yat prayante abhisam vishanti tad vijigyasavya tad brahmeti satapo tatpyata satapas tattva. So let me translate this to English. So his hints were Annam pranam chakshu shotram mano vachamiti. Food, life forces, pranam, chakshu shotram, eyes and ears, mano, that's intellect, vacham iti. And then he says, yato va imani bhutani jayante yen jatani jivanti. What is that from which all beings have emerged, which supports all beings and to which all beings return at the end? So This is the hint, or rather the gauntlet, that Rishi Varun lays down in front of Bhrigu. And he says, now go and meditate. Satapo tapyate satapas tattva. Uh, Go and meditate on these things, and you will come to the realization on your own, and you will realize that that tapas itself is Brahman. So, Rishi Bhrigu, being the good student that he was, he goes and meditates on the hints that his father gave him. And upon thinking deeply, he comes to the first realization. The first realization is, he says, okay, annam pranam chakshushrotram. So the first is annam, which means food. So he thinks very deeply about food, and he realizes that yes, the answer that I'm searching for is food. Ultimately, all beings are born out of food. All beings are sustained by food, and eventually, when we die, our bodies go back into the ground and we become food for somebody else. So it fits the bill. The hint and the answer which Rishi Varun had given him was that find that from which all beings emerge, which sustains all beings, and to which all beings go back. So food definitely fits the bill. Now, there is a deeper meaning to this food. By food, what we are trying to say is that food is ultimately what is food. So food is what creates our bodies. Our bodies are born out of fruit. So in a way, Rishi Bhrigu understands that what sustains, we are born with this body sustains us, and in the end this body is what dies off. So the body is essentially who Brahman is, or rather all of this, all of these beings are being sustained by food, and we are essentially nothing more than this body. And that's like the first step of any person. When you ask anybody who you are, they will say that I am this body. So this was his first realization, but then eventually he thought about it, and he thought about what Brahman is usually talked about. Brahman is said to be all-knowing, all-pervasive. So he thought about it and felt that probably food is not the right answer, because even though it fits the bill of what his father told him, it doesn't really meet the definition of Brahman as is told to all Brahmavetas. So he goes back to his father and says, please, sir, please teach me Brahman again. Atihi bhagvo brahme iti. So Rishi Varun again says that I have already given you these hints. Satapo tapyata, satabas tatva. Go and meditate on these hints. Don't keep coming back to me. Meditate. And he also says that tapas itself is Brahman. That meditation, through these meditations, you will become Brahman, or rather achieve Brahman. Let me pause here and discuss what has happened so far. So what so far has happened is that we have discussed the first layer of our existence. The first layer of our existence is this physical body. This is typically what we think of as ourselves. And in the Panchakosha Vivek, this is known as the Annamaya Kosh, or the most basic layer, the food layer of our existence. Now, as the next thought goes into Bhrigu's mind, he thinks of, after Annam comes Pranam. So he says, okay, I was born when life came into this body. That life force, my prana, is what sustains me. And eventually, when when the prana goes away, I will die. So, for all beings, that is true. The life forces are what are sustaining us. They are what give us life, and they are essentially what we go back into once we are no longer in this world. So he says, okay, then pranam also fits that bill. And definitely the life forces must be what his father was talking about. But he again thinks deeply over it and he's not satisfied with this answer. He says, okay, truly the life forces are do fit the bill, but they are not omniscient or omnipotent or any of those things that is associated with the with Brahman. So he is again a little bit confused. So he goes back to his father once again and says, dear sir, please teach me the knowledge of Brahman. And his father again says, go and meditate. I have already given you the hints. You have to meditate, you have to think harder, you have to, and you will come to the realization. Satapo tapeta, satapas tattva. So at this point, Bhrigu has already reached the next layer of our existence. So if we think about our own existence, the next layer of our existence is the life forces. The life forces are sustaining us. They are what helps the entire body to function properly, and it is the life forces which take us from one world to the another. When we are born, it is the life forces which come into this body, and when we die, the life forces are what goes away from them. So this layer of our existence is known as Pranamaya Kosha, and this is the second layer of existence. Now, upon deeper reflection, Bhrigu again thinks about the hints that his father has given him. The hints on Annam, Pranam, Chakshushrotram. So Chakshushrotram is eyes and ears. But what are eyes and ears? What is this hint? Eyes and ears are nothing but a window to the mind, because eyes and ears are the way we perceive the world. And who controls these senses is the mind. So clearly the mind might be another answer to this question of what is Brahman. So he thinks deeply about it and he reasons that the mind is what controls actions, and it is through action that beings come into this world, because it is through an action that your parents decide to give birth, and throughout the life of an individual, it is his actions that keep him going forward. So the mind controls all actions, and in this sense, the mind controls how we enter this world, how we live in this world, and how we leave this world. When the mind is decides that no further, I am not able to do any further action, that is when the life goes out of us. So maybe the man is another answer for Brahman. So this is what Rishi Bhrigu thinks. And this is what forms the third layer of our existence, the mental layer, the Manomaya Kosha. So he comes to this realization that one of the answers could also be the mind. But then he knows that through his studies, he knows that Brahman is something that does not have a cause. It is the cause of everything, but it is the primary cause of everything, but it is not a cause. It does not have its own cause. So, and the mind definitely has a cause. What the mind does, mind essentially flutters around. It is a collection of memories and thoughts and emotions and many things. So mind doesn't do anything on its own. It is rather the intellect which does everything for him. So he goes back to his father and again requests him, dear sir, please teach me what is Brahman. And his father again says, you go and do meditation. I have already given you all the hints. Please. So he comes back and again this time he thinks very deeply about it. And he comes to the conclusion that the mind doesn't do anything on its own. The mind is led by our intellect, the intelligence within us. And that intelligence is what drives the mind to create action. From that action is born a person, and through that action does one live one's life. So the intellect is what drives everything. So perhaps what his father was hinting was intellect of the person, the intelligence. And this intelligence is what drives everything in the universe. This forms the fourth layer of our existence, the Vijnanamaya Kosha. The Vijnanamaya Kosha is the place where most people tend to stop when talking about who they are. So if you talk about who you are, most people will first start with saying that I am the body. Then they will say, no, I am the life forces within me. I am the mind. Then finally, I am the intelligence, and the brain and the intelligence behind everything. But if you keep going on further and saying that no, where does this intelligence also comes from, that is where most people stop. But Brigu, having known that he has not reached the answer, and his father had already told him, no, this is not the answer, please go and meditate again. So this time Brigu comes back and really does some deep tapas. He really meditates hard, and he thinks about what is it that drives even the intellect. What is it that is driving everything in this universe? What is it that causes actions? What is it that creates karma? And he finally, after a lot of deep thinking, he comes to this realization that all action is created for the reason of happiness. Anand is the reason behind why action is created. And this is the fifth and final layer of our existence, the Anandamaya Kosha. But what kind of Anand? We are not talking about this momentary joy that we get from everyday actions, even though that joy keeps driving our actions. But when we perform those actions, when we perform those things, we are seeking to elongate the experience of joy all the time. We always try to gather more and more happiness in our lives, even though there is no real there is in the kind of things that we collect. So for example, we collect money, we collect property, we collect jobs, we collect titles, but none of these give us a permanent state of bliss. They are all temporary to a certain extent. Our money will last for say few years, or a job will give us some satisfaction, but someday or the other maybe the industry will move on, maybe your job will not be secure. So these are all temporary forms of happiness. Instead, what drives all actions, what drives the entire universe is a permanent solution for all sorrows. And that permanent state of happiness is Ananda, is what is being described as Ananda. And how do we attain that permanent state of happiness? Is by realizing that our real nature is not any of these body, mind, intellect, intelligence. Rather, it is a permanent state of consciousness, which is the core of our being. It is the eternal core of our being. It is the eternal core of everything around us. The knowingness, the beingness of existence is a permanent state of happiness because it is devoid of all experiences. And since it is devoid of experiences, there is no way that sorrow can even reach. Once we realize that we are eternal consciousness, eternal Sat, eternal Chit, all of these experiences that bring sorrow to us will cease to matter. And that is the truly permanent state of Ananda. And that is what is being hinted by Rishi Varun. Finally, Rishi Bhrigu realizes that Ananda itself is Brahman. Anandam Brahmeti Vijanat. And this time he is sure that he has arrived at the right answer, so he does not even need to go back to his father. And he realizes Brahman in this way and becomes free of sorrow. So, what are some of the things that we can learn from this story? The story talks about 5 sheaths of our existence: the Annamaya Kosh, the Pranamaya Kosh, the Manomaya Kosh, Vijnanamaya Kosh, and Anandamaya Kosh. Now, when we analyze ourselves in this way, we start with the gross body, which is our physical body, the hands, the feet. Uh, we think of ourselves as this limited being, limited in space and time, as this body. But that is only one layer of our existence. Then within that layer are our life forces, which are carrying on, which are moving, all kinds of forces that are moving our body, which are helping our body survive all the time. And that is another layer of our existence without which we cannot exist. But even deeper than that, if you think even deeper, it is the mind which controls all our sensory perceptions, all the way we experience joy and sorrow. It is what drives us in this universe. And within that mind is the intelligence, which really controls how we perform actions, whether we do good deeds or bad deeds. And those actions then have consequences, which further creates more actions, more consequences. And that is the cycle of karma as we know it, the karya karan cycle. But eventually, beyond all of this, there is something which is even deeper than all of this within us. And that is a state of permanent existence and permanent consciousness, which we can observe if we think really, really, really deeply about it, which we come to realize that that is just a witness to everything that is happening. That consciousness has been there when we were born, it will always be there when we live, and it will be there when we die. And that consciousness itself is the reality of everything. And in this way, we can realize that these sorrows that we think of are not our sorrows. They are the sorrows of the body. So pain and pleasure are the sorrows of the body, or joy and sorrow are the thoughts of the mind and the intellect. These are problems that belong to the mind, the mental layer and the intellectual layer. But we ourselves are neither of these. We are none of these layers. Our true nature is beyond all of these layers of existence. Our true nature is that of permanent Sat, permanent Chit, and that layer has no sorrows. It is truly free of all worries and sorrows, and that true nature is Ananda, and that is Brahman. Thank you for listening. I appreciate all your comments. Please do leave your comments. I like to read them and go through them, even those that are critical. I get to learn a lot from your comments. And please do subscribe to the channel if you want to encourage me to do more such videos. Thank you and namaskar.